I'll talk about endometriosis and infertility primarily. So I wanted to, if you look at the causes of infertility, there are a huge amount of causes. One important cause is poor oocyte and embryo quality as well. So you have ovulatory dysfunction, immunological alterations, peritoneal factors. Interference with implantation is also a very important cause. It has a very anti-inflammatory kind of action, mechanical factors of distortion, interference with coital function, and sperm inactivation. So if you look at there are a lot of factors acting in the pelvic cavity. It contains more of hyperactivated macrophages which produce cytokines. There's a negative effect on follicles and oocytes, or it creates hostile environment for fertilization. In addition, endometriotic lesions produce different cytokines such as interleukin 1 beta, IL-6, IL-8, and TNF alpha. And this all can lead to implantation failure and early spontaneous abortion, even in IVF procedure. There's something called error, endometrioma related reduction in ovarian reserve nowadays. And this paper came from Isil et al. In 2018, where he studied 80 patients, 40 with endometrioma and 40 without endometrioma. And he found that the AMH and AFC dropped down in 6 months in 26% of the patients as compared to controls where it dropped only by 7%. So endometriosis definitely has some effect on the ovarian reserve. If you look at the ASRM early comments on endometriosis, it's a common disease. Although women are asymptomatic, most women typically present with pelvic pain, dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, infertility, or an adnexal mass. Female age, duration of infertility, pelvic pain, and the stage of endometriosis should be considered when formulating a management. So you need to look at the treatment plan based on different groups of endometriosis patients. One is the adolescent group. Second is the patients who are in the fertile age group, but they don't fertility. They just come with the endometrioma. They are not married, or they are married and they have their career. They don't want to have immediate treatment. But they want fertility in the future. There's third group who comes to you who wants immediate fertility treatment, which can be stage 1, 2 or stage 3, 4. So you divide them into two main groups. And then the patients who have recurrent disease are the, so if you look at the stage 1 and 2 endometriosis, how do you diagnose it? You may occasionally diagnose it if you have a policy of putting a laparoscope in all patients of infertility, then obviously you will diagnose it. But most of us, especially now with medical legal litigation, would not put in a laparoscope unless there is specific indication, like the ASRM has given a practice committee guideline on when to do a laparoscopy. This is in Fertility Study 2015. However, they have said that if there is a symptom or there's an abnormal HHG or an abnormal ultrasound, or there is other, you are putting a scope for other reasons, you may find endometriosis. But if you want to put a scope just like that, then in patients who have a duration of infertility for more than 3 years, you may put a scope. So they have kept an escape route in the 2015 guidelines for like us who may want to do. But in our country, there are two other things that may be operational as well, like a genital tuberculosis, which may be subclinical. And that's why in our country, maybe if everything else fails, we may put in a laparoscope, even though on a clinical examination, there is no disease. So how do you treat the stage 1 or 2 disease? So you can treat it by 4 methods: expectant management, surgical and management during laparoscopy, controlled ovarian stimulation with IUI, and if everything above fails, then you can go for IVF. And so the whole discussion that I've done is based on 2 or 3 guidelines. One is the ASRM guideline that came in 2012. Then the 2014 ESHRE guideline came in, and in 15-16 our FOXY guideline also came in, which was mostly based on the ESHRE guidelines. And the guidelines are important because they are meta-analysis of all the studies that are there. So I'm not going to quote any studies much because the guidelines is a summary of everything. So we don't have to bother our brains with the studies which have been done. So if you look at the treatment of stage 1 and 2 disease, there is the 2014 ESHRE recommendation, which is based on Tuman's paper of 1997 and Nelson's paper of 1993. And it states that in infertile women with stage 1 and 2 endometriosis, clinicians may perform IUI with controlled ovarian stimulation. So expectant management should not be done, or IUI alone should not be done. IUI with controlled ovarian stimulation gives the best result. That's the final conclusion, and there should be no argument on this. The second guideline was, and that was based on Opin's paper in 2011, in infertile women with stage 1 to endometriosis undergoing laparoscopy prior to the treatment with ART, clinicians may consider complete surgical removal. So if you get a scope, you put in a scope and there is abnormality, you do excision and histopathology, because excision histopathology is very important to establish the diagnosis of endometriosis. So you should excise at least some part of it. You may ablate, but you may also excise some for the establishment of the diagnosis. In infertile women with AFS stage 1 to endometriosis, clinicians may consider performing IUI. So after you use excision, within 6 months of surgical excision, controlled ovarian stimulation with IUI will give you the best outcome. So what is my approach for stage 1 and 2 disease? If there's a young woman with endometriosis, I do AMH and offer fertility preservation. If AMH is less than 1.5, it can be either oocyte freezing or ovarian tissue freezing. In older women wanting to preserve fertility with endometriosis, I do again AMH. If AMH is less than 1.5, I'll offer them fertility preservation. For stage 1 to asymptomatic patients, I can treat as an unexplained infertility, though unexplained can be established only by putting a laparoscope, but we can do a tubal testing, and if there is no symptom, ultrasound is totally normal, one can do controlled ovarian stimulation with IUI. If that fails, one can, if you have a policy of putting a laparoscope in all infertile patients, you can put a scope, and if you get to know that there's disease inside, you can treat it, follow it by few more cycles of controlled ovarian stimulation and IUI, and if that fails, go for IVF. If on the other hand, you have already put in a scope and you see the disease, you treat it with laparoscopy, follow it by controlled ovarian stimulation and IUI within 6 months, and if that fails, you go for IVF. So it's a very simple approach for the stage 1 and 2 disease. What about stage 3 and 4 disease? You have diagnosis based on symptoms, clinical findings, 3D and 2D and 3D ultrasound. Very rarely you may need an MRI diagnosis. And in these patients, a laparoscopy with a biopsy and histopathology is very important. So you must send a piece of the wall for histopathology diagnosis. Otherwise, tomorrow if there is a complication, there is a dispute, they'll say, doctor kya bol rahe hain, endometriosis nikala hi nahi. If it goes to court, they'll say, आपने endometriosis निकाला नहीं. कैसा है? क्या proof है आपके पास? So you must do a histopathology. You can also do a new marker. It is called Activa test, which I will now start in India also. It's called a BCL6 marker of the endometrium. So you can take a endometrial biopsy and you can do the test. So many people in US and all, they nowadays don't do for mild disease. They don't do scopy. They'll do controlled ovarian stimulation with IUI, and if that fails, they'll go straight for IVF. But if there is endometriosis, then if you give GnRH agonist before embryo transfer, it would improve result. But for diagnosing endometriosis, you'll have to put a scope in. Instead of that, they take an endometrial biopsy, do this marker, and if that marker comes positive, before embryo transfer, they will give 2 shots of GnRH agonist and then do the transfer. So they'll do a blind transfer because this test is quite accurate in predicting endometriosis. What about the treatment of stage 3 and 4 disease? Surgical, you can do a laparotomy, laparoscopy, robotic, medical, where there is no much indication. You can do controlled ovarian stimulation with IUI, or you can do IVF. So now let us look at the H3 and the ASRM recommendations for stage 3 and 4 disease. In women with stage 3 and 4 endometriosis associated infertility, conservative surgical therapy with laparoscopy or possible laparotomy may be beneficial. That's what the ASRM guideline said. And the H3 guideline also supported it. In women operated on for an endometrioma more than 3 centimeters, clinicians should perform ovarian cystectomy instead of drainage and electrocoagulation for the secondary prevention of endometriosis associated recurrence, dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, and non-menstrual pain. This was based on the Cochrane meta-analysis of 2008 done by Hart et al. And based on that, the ASRM and H3 recommended that yes, you must do a surgery. And if you do surgery, it's better to excise the whole endometrium rather than leaving the capsule behind. Ovarian reserve testing should be done in such patients. In case of poor ovarian reserve, fertility preservation in the form of oocyte freezing or ovarian tissue freezing may be offered, especially in those patients who want to retain their fertility potential but who are not planning immediate pregnancy. Is there any medical role after cystectomy for ovarian endometrioma in women? So there may be a group of women who want fertility, but not immediately. In those women, you can put them on estrogen plus progesterone, oral contraceptive pill. And this was based on Versanini's study of 2010. This is a ESHRE recommendation. And in women operated on endometriosis, clinicians are recommended to prescribe post-operative use of LNG-IUCD or a combined hormonal contraceptive for at least 18 to 24 months as one of the options for secondary prevention of endometriosis associated dysmenorrhea, but not for non-menstrual pelvic pain or dyspareunia. So you can give interim medical therapy only if they want to prolong and they want fertility at a later date. They came to you, you treated them, but they don't want immediate fertility. So you can use hormonal contraception, or you can use levonorgestrel loaded IUCD. Now, what are the surgical nuances? You all are great laparoscopic surgeons. I don't have to tell you all this, but just some little bit of observation. The observation of post-operative decrease in anti-Mullerian hormone may be because of inadvertent removal of ovarian tissue or destruction of follicles from excessive use of electrosurgery. The amount of tissue removed increases with a larger endometrioma and also with use of pre-operative suppressive therapy and surgeons' inexperience. So inexperienced surgeon, and these are all, I'm talking to you, all these are studies. Their recent study has shown that they compared experienced and inexperienced surgeon. They compared residents to consultant, and they found outcome to be different. Again, pre-operative GnRH agonists can obliterate the planes of surgery and outcome may be bad. And a large endometrioma can also cause a poor outcome. So how do you decrease
3 minutes remaining?
Pardon?
Doctor, 3 minutes remaining.
What are you saying? I'm going to take 20 minutes because it's 15 minutes plus 5. Don't disturb me. I'm timing my phone also here. I started at 24. So if you use minimal use of electrosurgery, precise hemostasis, dissection in a proper plane using diluted vasopressin, use of alternative methods of electrosurgery like plasma and CO2 laser, use of hemostatic agents like gelatin matrix and thrombosil or suture. You can also use a 3-step procedure by Donez, which is drainage of the endometrioma, GnRH agonist for 12 weeks, and then you can again go and ablate. So this 3-step procedure can reduce the damage to the endometrioma, or you can do a 2-step excision ablation procedure again by Donez, where you can dissect the you can actually dissect the endometrioma, and you can go till the hilum, and then you can cut off the capsule, leave the residual capsule behind, and ablate it either by a bipolar ablation or a CO2 ablation. You can also do adhesion barrier like Interseed and Gore-Tex to avoid pelvic adhesions and promote oocyte capture. Does influence IVF outcome? The influence of endometriosis on the success rate of IVF is unequivocal. The pregnancy rates after IVF ICSI were reported to be lower in patients with stage 3 and 4 endometriosis as compared with those with tubal factor. It has to be noted, however, that some large databases, so there are large databases like SART and HFEA, which have shown that there is no difference in outcome. GnRH agonist may not be inferior to GnRH agonist protocol in women with mild or minimal endometriosis. So what is the surgery? Do you do surgical treatment prior to ART? So if you want to, a patient comes to you and you want to do IVF, would you do a surgical treatment? Most of the advocated treatments, they say that in women with endometrioma larger than 3 centimeters, the ESHRE guideline has recommended that you don't have to do cyst removal unless there is a problem as far as the symptom is concerned. So if there is asymptomatic endometrioma or a endometrioma that is coming in the way, only in those patients, a large 3 to 4 centimeters, you would remove the cyst. What about the surgery? So if you continue it, the clinicians can, so there are certain now guidelines that you can prescribe the GnRH agonist for 3 to 6 months prior to treatment with ART to improve clinical pregnancy rates in infertile women with endometriosis. And when you're doing the oocyte retrieval, there is a chance of a pus abscess formation. And in our group, we give prophylactic antibiotics. What about recurrence patients? Your patient has come with recurrent endometrioma. There are a lot of studies that have shown that it's better to do IVF rather than do surgical treatment on these patients again. So if you look at the combined recommendations of S3 and ASRM guidelines, the only indication for pre-IVF surgery are a severe pelvic pain, that is a symptomatic endometrioma, or a endometrioma which is a more than 4 centimeter size that may come in the way of the pickup. If you look at WU's study of 2019, it is a meta-analysis of 13 studies, 2,878 patients, where he compared non-surgery with surgery prior to IVF. There was no difference in outcome of the pregnancies. However, the total number of oocytes obtained were lower with the surgical group. And if you look at Wang's study of 2019, effect of cystectomy on AMH levels, he showed that a bilateral endometrioma or a cyst size more than 7 centimeters can cause a decrease in the AMH levels. Anna Kobo, who is my very good friend, did a 10-year observational study of 485 patients who came for fertility preservation. They had endometriosis, and she concluded that women less than 35 years, if you do fertility preservation prior to surgery, it can improve the result. So if you look at the flow chart, this has been beautifully given by recent paper of Larena et al. In 2019. If there's a preoperative endometriosis patient who desires fertility, you look at the patient. If there's a bilateral endometrioma, unilateral endometrioma with history of surgery for contralateral disease, history of multiple surgeries, then in those patients, you offer her fertility preservation. However, if there is none of these things, you look at the ovarian reserve. If the ovarian reserve is low, again, you can offer a fertility preservation, or the age of the patient is 37 or more, you can offer fertility. I feel that the cutoff should be 35. This is, of course, Diana Eden, where we had, me and Dr. Nandita, we had she had endometriosis and we froze her eggs in 2007, and 9-10 years later used the frozen eggs to give a pregnancy. So it's very important, these two techniques are there, and I wanted to show you that the ovarian tissue technique, especially because when you're doing surgery, you can do ovarian cortex dissection. So when you're doing the surgery and you're removing the endometrioma, you can take out few strips of ovarian cortex and can freeze them as well. Especially if there are bilateral endometriomas and you didn't have the time, or patient may not like to do ovarian tissue freezing after that going for surgery. You may combine both the two, take the tissue, remove the cortex, dissect the cortex totally, dissect the medulla totally, and we regularly do this freezing, not only for these patients, but also for patients of cancer. A lot of patients come to us, and this is the holder in which we create these cortical strips, and then we put them in liquid nitrogen directly after exposing them to 20 minutes of vitrification media and freeze them. And later on, we can put this strip back after the patient needs the. So what is for the stage 3 and 4 endometrioma? There are 3 options. If you have, you can do a laparoscopy for all, following that control ovarian stimulation IUI for 6 months, following that IVF. On the other hand, if you can do scopy only for patients which have a endometrioma more than 3 to 4 centimeters or have symptoms like pain. If there is recurrent endometriosis, you can go directly for IVF. And if there is fertility preservation, you base it based on the ovarian reserve, age more than 35, bilateral endometrioma, recurrent endometrioma, and it's better to do either oocyte freezing or IVF. As IVF is concerned, we would normally give a depot exposure of 2 to 6 months. But what I do is normally we classify the response of the patient, stimulate them with antagonist protocol. In these patients, we avoid using testosterone, DHAs, growth hormone as adjuvant because it can aggravate the endometriosis. We give antibiotic prophylaxis, avoid the puncture of the cyst. If we, in the way we aspirate it, but we'll change the needle. We do ICSI for all because the cumulus is covered with endometriosis. Embryo freezing and pooling is done of the endometriosis, and then we later on give 2 shots of GnRH agonist, and then we do the transfer. So this is the last slide. So if there's an infertile woman with suspected endometriosis, you do an infertility workup. And if there are other indications for IVF ICSI, you go straight for IVF. If you look at the ovarian reserve, if there's a poor ovarian reserve or age more than 35, 37, you go for IVF. If on the other hand, you suspect mild or moderate disease, you can do laparoscopic removal followed by control ovarian stimulation IVF for 3 to 6 cycles. If that fails, go for IVF. If there is moderate to severe disease, you can look at the patient, and based on it requirement, either you can go via the surgical procedure followed by IUI, followed by IVF, or go directly for IVF. Thank you for a patient hearing.